This comment is about the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. Now, whenever I bring up the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, like I did in this last video, there's always someone who gets very upset over the fact that I mentioned these books, saying he's a scam artist who's in debt. This is what I mean, is that if you actually read the books, a lot of the books are about the difference between good debt and bad debt. There's an interview about the debt that he has, and the interviewer asked him, like, what would the banks do if you ended up having to go bankrupt? And he said, the banks won't let me go bankrupt because it would hurt their bottom line too much. And the reason I like his books is they're told in a story type fashion. He grew up not well off, and his dad was somebody who worked very hard. But he had a friend down the street whose dad was, or in the neighborhood, one of the kids he knew, that was very well off. And he took lessons on capitalism from that man. The reason I asked you if you've read the books is because if you read the book, you would understand it's not capitalist propaganda. He's one of those guys, like, if you read his books, he tells you that you can buy up housing, you can buy up apartment complexes, you can do all of that. But if you can't do all of that, you can invest in stocks. What's it look like to invest in stocks? As well as one of the tenets, one of the pillars of his belief system is giving back to communities, charitable donations. And one of the things that always stuck out with him, one of the books he wrote, was talking about how he decides who is a good investment, or an investor, or a worker. He talks about how he judges people by their pets, that there's been times when he's gone to people's houses and when he met the animal that they have, decided not to do business deals with them because their pet was a reflection of them. I think that when one has two black and white ways of thinking, they miss out on a lot of information, they miss out on a lot of complexity that is the human experience. And most people who have a lot of money in the eyes of a capitalistic society are actually in a lot of debt, but it's what's considered good debt. And a lot of people work very, very hard to not be in debt, not understanding that they can leverage debt. I don't know. I'm more of a realist. And the reality is we live in a capitalistic society. One time I was at my brother's place and he turned around and complained about the plastic bags. He couldn't tell if it was recycled plastic or if it was real plastic, and they weren't supposed to be using plastic. And I was looking at him going, you know, on the grand scale of the world, right? Like, I used to be a Save the Polar Bears person. I still am, but on the grand scheme of on the planet, you know, the people setting up AI companies in the southern states and gassing out towns does far worse for the environment than the one-time reusable plastic bag. You know, it's like when we got rid of plastic bags that everyone was repurposing, and now we just have these cloth bags that are sitting and ending up in landfills, and everyone's having to buy plastic bags. They were just getting them with their groceries. And I'm not saying any of this to change your mind, because by the intensity of your comments, I'm not going to change your mind. But I also think we've reached a place in time where, like, I could probably go through your profile and probably pick out things that aren't entirely feminist, or aren't entirely socialist, or aren't entirely, you know, Greenpeace, Green Earth, all of that. And I think that, you know, you can't win or lose in this environment. We can't win or lose, because I can make the argument that, you know, buying paper text is wasteful to the environment because we're using paper, and to make paper uses so much this, but then I'm going to go and put it on a Kindle. And then I can have a conversation about how being on a Kindle is using battery, which uses lithium, which is mined in the Congo, where people are being unalive. So, I mean, like, there's no ethical consumption. And I'm sorry, but, like, to sit down, I actually ordered Karl Marx's book because everyone always talks about Karl Marx. I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down and read his books. Tell me why it's the most inaccessible read. You know, like, I can sit down, and my point with the Rich Dad Poor Dad is that it's extremely accessible. It's extremely easy to understand. It explains the concepts in a very easy, digestible, storytelling fashion. And it also always becomes this question of like, okay, when do you other people? If someone believes in socialism isn't isn't what we live under currently. So if I believe in socialism, there's going to be choices I have to make that aren't socialist. And, like, in this world of gaining wealth or attempting to, you know, thrive in a capitalistic society, there's going to be points of that you're going to have to make decisions that don't align with your belief system, because we live in a capitalistic society. And I think in the grand scale of, like, consumption and the world, reading a book about the system that is more easily accessible and more easily digestible, to me, feels very low on the spectrum of poor choices one can be making. And even people that you don't agree with, that don't have the same belief systems as you, that operate differently, still can bring value to a conversation and still can make points that you don't necessarily know of. But that's just me. I think that there's always something to be taken away from having a conversation with someone or paying attention to someone. I hate Donald Trump. Hate, 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 hate. Hate, hate, hate. Right? But I can acknowledge he's done things well, even though I despise him for it.